We got to share our screen with 32. Share PowerPoint. Get this out of the way if I can. I'm sure there's a way to minimize that. We'll worry about it. Okay, so here we go. Here we go. So what this chapter is cardiovascular system, which is going to be looking at the heart and the blood vessels. Okay. So before we can get started, we got to mess you up, right? I got to tell you how other animals do. Now we know that we have. I think y'all are aware of this, but we have what's called a closed circulatory system. Okay. So many animals, like some of the aquatic, like the hydra stuff, they have no circulatory system. Or the planaria, they actually do gas exchange, with the outside, because they're all touching the water. They can just do diffusion of gases and stuff that way, and all the cells just get food from each other, but just sending it through active transport. But we do start to see these guys do have a circulatory system of sorts. They pump water through their body, and these guys really don't have one, right? This is what the hydra doesn't have one, right? But they just, all their cells are near the water or near the food, okay? And then we got to see that there are two types of circulatory systems. There are those that we have the classical closed circulatory system. And what that means is our blood is never running loose in our body. If it is, what's happened to you? You got a bruise, you've been slapped, right? Mom, daddy slapped you or something, right? Okay. Or you fail, a bruise is a tearing of a blood vessel and the blood getting into this interstitial space, okay? Or in between the cells, okay? The insects is the classic one, have an open circulatory system. So they have a heart that pumps blood, and this ain't called blood, they call it hemolymph, because it doesn't actually carry oxygen. This is kind of weird. Now y'all know the main purpose of our blood is to carry oxygen in red blood cells, so every cell gets oxygen, right? And then we get rid of CO2, the gases our cells make as we burn sugar. So we got to do this gas exchange, and that's a big deal. And we'll talk about it a little bit today. I'm going to talk a little bit about it in the chapter on respiratory that's coming up. Okay? But these guys, the insects, they don't have red blood cells in their blood. Their blood simply carries the nutrients and waste products. Okay, and I'll give you this. Anybody been brown fishing and ball crickets? And I have to. So it's kind of really brutal. But here's what you do. You take this scalpel, hook, and gut him. But you don't want to kill him. You want him to twitch a little bit, right? And you throw it out in the lake with this cork or whatever, or float, and he just out there and Jaws comes and eats him and pulls him under. And when he does, you catch Jaws and eat Jaws, which is a bass or brown. It's kind of like us taking, people and wound them and throw them out in the ocean for shark hunters. We would never do that. It's very bad. Okay. But I keep thinking how mean it is with those little crickets, right? But anyway, how many of y'all done that and noticed you didn't get red on your hand? When you poke the cricket, you just clear stuff comes out. That's his hemolymph. That's his blood. But it doesn't have red blood cells, so therefore it doesn't have that color we're used to blood. They have little tubes that start on the side of their body, little holes. They have little plumbing tubes like ducking, like air conditioning ducking. And as they jump and move around, they pull air in like an accordion works. So they pull air into tubes into their sides of their body. They do not breathe through their mouth. And I did not know that. I got to grad school. Remember, I didn't do insects. Okay? All right, I actually learned that, I guess, in first year in zoology. So anyway, so one of my first questions is, what's the difference between this open and closed? That the insects pump the blood up, and then they blow it over their organs, and it just loose, and it gets collected in a vein at the bottom of their thoracic cavity. Okay, and that's what you got on your finger when you did a hook on a cricket. No blood ever comes out of those guys. Okay, so pretty cool, right? And so one of the things we have this closed circulatory system, so our blood is always in arteries, big arteries, limited arteries, capillary beds, which is the area of exchange, the smallest blood vessels, and then little veins, a little bit bigger veins, and gigantic veins like communication. So our blood is always in the tube. It's never running loose unless you cut it or tear it. That's a bruising or whatever. Okay, a hematoma or whatever. Okay, pretty cool. There it is. So there's what they do. So that cricket is going to pump that blood, blow it over the organs, right, and collect it up on the other side and pump it back up to the heart, pumps it back to the organ. Ours is always in the tube. We're very similar to the earthworm in that they have a closed circulatory system. That's pretty cool. Okay, so we're always in arteries, capillary beds, or veins. Arteries are always thicker than veins, and here's some veins, and veins have valves in them to allow us to carry the blood back to the heart. I'll go ahead and answer this one of the other questions, and this is kind of crazy, but the heart doesn't pump blood back to the heart. Y'all catch that? Your heart doesn't pump blood back to your heart. It only pumps it through the capillary beds in your body. And then veins have valves that prevent backflow. And as you sit and breathe and walk to the next class, you squeeze these veins in your legs, and it's kind of like opening toothpaste. It's stepping on it, it only goes out the hole, right? Because that folded part at the end is kind of like a flap. Well, these valves prevent backflow of blood, so it gets pushed back to the heart with very little pressure. Matter of fact, maybe 4 or 5 pounds per square inch, and the vena cava and your aorta, the brachial artery that we check for blood pressure is 120 millimeters of mercury of water pressure. Okay, square now. Has anybody ever cut themselves? Hope nobody's cut themselves. Man, anybody ever cut themselves like in a car wreck, motorcycle wreck, anything like that? Okay, I had a cousin. We were racing motorcycle time. He cut my granddad. I love you. Hope you're in heaven. He put up a freaking barbed wire fence. I didn't even know was there a gate. You're like on the farm, the gates are made out of like 3 or 4 lines. Barbed wire. Well, we get this place behind our barn. I drove motorcycles my whole life. I'm like 15. My cousin's 16. And we're racing down the bottom, and I guess Granddad got pissed off us buzzing his house. And he went down, put the gate up, and didn't tell us. So we're racing to the bottom, and I'm in second. I'm about to be to the guys in the back in second place, but he hit the 3 barbed wire wires. One caught him in the teeth, broke his front teeth. One caught him right in the neck, and it almost missed his carotid artery by like 1 millimeter. And the other one caught him in the scrotum. Threw him off the motorcycle, parts went everywhere. I stopped, went over to him, moved him over, and he's bleeding. But it's blue blood, he's not squirt blood. If you ever cut yourself and you get like a water hose, that's an artery, you're gonna die if I don't get that stopped. You know, like a major one. But luckily he was just oozing here, his teeth were, his face was hurt. You know, obviously the barbed wire caught him and it broke, and then he's still okay down there, but he had some damage down there and cut him. And we got an ambulance out there and he looked up, but when they got in the hospital, he said they nicked his carotid artery, he bled death in my arm that day. There's good times coming in second place. Okay, so say it, look at it. Take the silver, man. I think I was correct, okay? But if I'd been in the lead, that could have killed one of us. But arteries, always bigger. They have muscles, more muscles on them because they have lots of pressure. Veins have very little pressure, so they have very small thickness of the structure itself, okay? And then we have these valves to prevent backflow. Now, here's another cool one that I didn't make any question to come my life. How many of y'all got mom and dad that do varicose veins in their legs and stuff? That is, veins are not draining properly. So the blue streaks is old blood, it's not draining properly. And guess what a hemorrhoid is? A varicose vein of the rectum. So they get swollen up as you get older and stuff, and they will poke out and be literally a pain in the butt for you. And so literally you can have them cut out, and guess what? Another vein will just pop up later. So if you end up getting them, and it's a lot of times hereditary, random, and that they're quite painful. Okay. But anyway, so hemorrhoid is a varicose vein of the rectum, which is kind of weird. Okay. All right, here's that capillary bed we're talking about. That's what we're going to do the exchange. Okay. And then most of us have, especially the higher animals, have 2 circuits. So you have the left and right side of the heart. And one side is called the systemic circuit, and the other side is called the pulmonary circuit. For us, the right side of the heart takes the blood to the lungs, and that's where we do this gas exchange. And that's the pulmonary circuit, us and the bird. And then the left side pumps blood all through your body, to all the capillary beds in your body. Now, I want to throw this out there just to help us kind of get a reference as we go through the system. And this is a big one here. But one of the chapters, and we actually covered this last semester, so you already know this, but I'm going to say a few cuss words, okay, from last semester to make y'all remember this, but I hate to cuss, but sometimes you just have to cuss. Glycolysis, Krebs cycle. See, I got it as cuss words, right? You know, okay, electron transfer chain. Oh, that's a really bad dirty word, right? But remember, we had to know this equation. Look, remember? Cellular respiration is C6H12. O6 sugar plus 6 oxygens is broken down through all that stuff I just mentioned into what? 6 carbon dioxides, 6 waters, and we make 36, 38 theoretical ATPs, but we've only seen like 30 right in the lab. We got to get rid of this gas. That's got to go out of our body, and we got to get CO2. And the blood is going to carry both of these gases. So that's why I'm bringing it up today. The cardiovascular system is going to carry those gases for us, and the systemic circuit takes the blood to the lung to do that gas exchange, oxygen in, CO2 out, and then the systemic circuit carries it to every cell in your body through the capillary bed, thus giving our cells the oxygen they need to do cellular respiration, which we talked about. Thank you, Lord. Last semester, we're not going to cover all that again. But now we see why we use that and how we get those gases there. And when we do the circulatory chapter, I will make you list how it's carried. We'll cover that more when we get circulatory. So I thought that's a good point to bridge tonight. That this is one of the main purposes of the cardiovascular system is to carry those gases right in the blood so we can live and do cellular respiration. Okay. Now, your heart is about the size. I've read several many books on this. So somewhere between the size of your fist and your two fists put together. So great big people have very big hearts, and little bitty people have little bitty hearts, right? And emotions are not in the heart, right? I know there's a lot of great country songs, and it's a heartache, nothing but a heartache. And that's an old one from the 80s, right? Okay. But when you do get upset when that boy or girl, or in this case, they weren't busy by both break your heart. The sympathetic nervous system will make the heart ache a little bit, right? And so we thought emotion was in the heart, right? Well, we just celebrated a stupid holiday, right? Doing that a couple weeks ago. Valentine's Day, right? It's crazy, right? We got chocolate boxes shaped like hearts. Isn't that weird? Some aliens can blow us up, man. We're crazy. What are we doing with these hearts things? But we use associated with emotion. But it has nothing to do with it. It is a pump to pump blood. That is its main purpose, right? Okay, and we know where it's located, right in the thoracic cavity there, blah, 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 blah. Here's what the human heart looks like. Now, right off the bat, I want to show you something that really blew my mind. Every time I saw this before, I thought, that this the heart would be like, you just cut this into 4 chambers, right? It's not. The big part here, the big muscular part that you're seeing is the ventricles. They're the pumps. The left ventricle pumps blood to all your body, and the right ventricle pumps it to the lungs and back to the heart. The atriums are little repository bags to collect the blood. They're just like storage tanks. And here they look like little angel wings here and here. So when we do, we'll dissect the heart, or we'll look at a cat possibly, or a pig and lab, and you'll see this. This is actually a little cat, I believe, picture right here. This is a cat or pig heart. See it laying with the lungs on the inside of it. The tip is called the apex, and it's always in the left ventricle. And actually, the left and right ventricles are separated pretty much by, not really good one here, these blood vessels right here. So this is probably left, and right up here is the right ventricle. Okay? And so it's kind of a weird picture there. Now, I want to give you my blood flow. I'm going to actually, if I can pull up a screen here, I probably will kill myself trying to, I'll break something up here if I can do this. Let's see if I can, I'm trying to see if I can do a blank screen here. There's a mechanism to do that somehow. Let's see if I can remember that. Actually, I think the easiest thing that's going to be do is to that lets it out. That's not what I wanted to do. I'm going to mess up here. Let's go to a blank screen here real quick. I don't know if I recorded or not, so we shall see. But I'm gonna write them up here on the board for y'all. I'm gonna abbreviate, and y'all can spell them out for me. I get somewhere. Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna start with blood in the body, and it's gonna come back to the heart through the vena cava. And there's superior and inferior, but we're just gonna lump them together. They dump into the right atrium. The right atrium then has a valve between it and the right ventricle called the, in my story straight, I believe this is the tricuspid valve. And these are called atrioventricular valves because they're between atrial ventricles. And then when the right ventricle contracts, the blood goes out another type of valve called a semilunar valve, and this one is called the pulmonary semilunar valve. This is all spelled out on that page in the book there, and that goes to the pulmonary trunk, or pulmonary artery, whatever you want to call it. Now, all of that is on page 6. I'm jumping ahead around here. That's on page 602 in your book in a paragraph. Okay, but I just put it out in a graph, in a step like this. Then blood for the pulmonary trunk is going to go to the lungs, and this is where we're going to do that gas exchange. So I'm just going to give you a little preview here. Here's the air and the alveoli, and this is your blood vessel. I'll label that blood vessel. So oxygen is going to leave the air and go into the blood, and CO2 leaves the blood and goes in the air by simple gas diffusion. So this thing works with simple gas diffusion from something from high to low. And this is why you can't breathe water, because there's not enough oxygen and water to live off of. We can't get that oxygen out of the water because it's so small amount. We have to breathe air, which is 20% oxygen and about 80% nitrogen. The blood then comes back from the lungs to the pulmonary vein into the left atrium. And then we're going to have another atrioventricular valve. This was called the bicuspid. And then because of biology, we got to give everything 2 words, are also called mitral valve. Has 2 names, into the right ventricle. And then when the right ventricle contracts, the blood goes out another semilunar valve I'm just going to abbreviate aortic semilunar valve into the largest blood vessel of the body called the aorta, and it carries blood to the entire body. What do you think? So we'll do it up. So do it again. And this will be on the test for sure. This is probably the one I'm doing. Everybody's test right. Because I want you to know this. So body blood comes from the body, the vena cava, the right atrium, the tricuspid valve, and the right ventricle. When it contracts, pulmonary semilunar valve to the pulmonary trunk to the lungs, we do the gas exchange, blood comes back, pulmonary vein, left atrium. When it contracts, bicuspid mitral valve into the right ventricle, out the aortic semilunar valve. When the ventricle contracts, to the aorta. With that, and I actually got that one wrong. Oops, look at that one arrow. That's the left ventricle, the largest chamber in the heart. So excuse me, I missed that one, left ventricle, which is always the biggest. So when you look at a cut heart, which we're not going to do y'all, but in AP, we look at cut hearts, find the biggest hole, use reverse logic to find all the other chambers and holes. In AP, I make you learn 16 things, 14, 12, 12 are on the board. So everything except body and lung are parts you need to know. So that's 12 of the 16 things you got to know. You take AP. Then we throw in like interventricular septum, which is in between, and some other stuff. Is that kind of cool? So what we have here is a two-stroke, four-chambered engine. Anybody knows anything about cars? So it's a two-stroke, four-chambered pump. Okay. Now, heart rate equals pulse rate. Pulse rate is the arteries expanding every time the heart contracts. So God set this heart to beat every 0.85 seconds. And when it does, it's like turning the water hose on and cutting the water hose off, and then turning it on, and that creates a pulse down that water hose, right? You've seen the water hose jump when you turn it on, right? So our arteries kind of expand when the heart contracts, and then they relax in that 0.15 seconds when the heart's resting, when it's not beating. So pulse rate equals heart rate, okay? Now check this out. Let's check this math out. And let's just do this in our mind real quick. Actually, I'll do it on my calculator. Make it even easier. Your book does it too. But if normal heart rate is, let's say, 60 to 100, okay? Check this out. Let's just make it 80. That's 80 beats a minute times 60 minutes an hour times 24 hours a day times 365 days a year. That's 42 million beats per year. And let's give yourself 80 years. So that's, I don't know, it went crazy. My calculator died. That's like 3,363,000,000 contractions. And I'm talking about complete, look, and it does it like this, look. The ventricles, the atriums fill up, they contract, so they actually in sync. These contract, blood goes through these atrioventricular valves into the ventricles and fill. When the ventricles contract, blood wants to go back up, but that valve closes, and that's the first sound of the heartbeat. Then the blood goes through the aortic semilunar valve, the aorta, to the pulmonary semilunar valve, to the pulmonary trunk. And then when the ventricles relax, blood comes back to the ventricles and the semilunar valves slow close. So we're talking about two complete big events, right? Atriums contracting, right? Ventricles, valves closing, and then ventricles relaxing, and second set of valves closing. You do that like your book. What does the book say there? 60. I mean, it gives the number here in the book. Hold on, let me look. Get my math screwed up. I think it's pretty bizarre. Hang on. Should open that up. Okay, 32. No, I actually read these all Sunday night. I did get the book out Sunday night and read a little bit, but I didn't have to do a whole lot of reading. This is one of my things I know a little bit about. Okay, let me read this. That's crazy. And actually give the numbers in the book. Somewhere, here we go. Heartbeat. Let me find it because I thought it was pretty crazy since my calculator died. 2.5 billion in a lifetime. 2.5, I think I rounded it up there a little bit. And that's where we get excited with a football game or on a date. To the coma. Let me ask y'all this. We'll just have a little fun with this, just a little side fun note. Is there anything you buy at Walmart that worth 2.8 billion times? I don't think there is. That door, I've done had to oil it twice. We've been in this building 8 years, 9 years. Matter of fact, we came in here the other day, took y'all's test. Remember the door? Did we get locked? Who got locked in here with me last week? Was it this guy? Somebody slammed the door. I couldn't get out. There's like me and 3 students. And I didn't want to be with what I was doing. The other 2 scared me, right? I'm like, oh Lord, I'm gonna be locked in this building. The security busted open, right? And I beat on it. That's what we do in the farm. It don't work. It hit it really hard and it don't back up. Okay, but it did. He jammed it as they left somehow. But the mechanism in this thing finally needs to be fixed. Nothing works this many times. Okay, I told one story. I've got a couple here. So when I turned 15 back in the 80s. You could drive, get your full driver's license at 15. Now it's like 18 or 17 ride or something. But I mean, you get your permit at 13, you know, and you get your license at 50. I done totaled 2 trucks on the farm before I got my license. So my dad, it must have been a good farm year. He took me to Tupelo. He took me to this GMC lot. He had a friend that worked at GMC. He said, pick a car. But I was just kind of a modest guy. If I could go back and do that again, I probably got the Corvette. And he would have slapped me. He would have just, he went, hey, no, we ain't doing that. So anyway, but they had this little car that looked reasonable. And I bought a Oldsmobile Omega. Now, I'm a farm guy, but I knew not to get a truck. Because what happens if you have a truck on a farm? Anybody here live on a farm? It becomes the farm truck, and I'd be dragging dead calves, all cows off in the truck, and that's just not going to be good on Friday night trying to hook up with a girl on the day. I'm riding around my truck with blood hanging out to the dead cow in the back, right? So I bought a car, and we couldn't use it on the farm. So it's a 4-door car. Seriously, it looked like a bread box on wheels. And it had a T-top in it you could take off, and it had a little case to put it in the trunk. And it had an 8-track in the dash. It was really cool in the floorboard, like built into the console. 8-track, and that was power music. I drove the thing for like, I didn't drive it for 12 years, but about year 3, I got a letter from the GMC. I mean, and they said, and it was a first-year production model, and that don't ever buy a first-year production model. No matter how cool you think that car is, never buy first year. They said, you need to bring this car in, the doors could fall off. I'm like, ain't no door will fall off a darn car. Right? Come on, man. This is for electric windows and stuff. Okay. But you know, you had to roll them down. So I go, my mother asked me that the day that mail came in, like 2 days later, mother says, don't you take this and go buy this stuff at this new store in Tupelo. You're not gonna believe it. It's real famous. They're reading about it in the paper. It's right here. She gave me directions, and I drove into Walmart for the first time ever. So Walmart was like brand new. I opened the door and the darn door fell off. I swear, but it did. There was some wires still holding. So if it just broke off, I just threw the trunk, drove home. But it was still connected, but broke. Did I tell y'all it was a manual transmission? Yeah, the manual transmission. So I had to ask somebody to come push the door against the door while I'm in the car crank. So I took my left arm out and held the door. Then I drove home shifting with my stomach. I steered with my stomach while I shifted. So I was like, and took it back in, and they reattached the door. So it had some kind of faulty door. 12 years later, I get my second car, and I get, some of y'all may remember that Oldsmobile, you can't buy one. And if I could buy one, I'd buy it. Because I got no money, I'd buy like $2,000 junk just trying to work. Then I bought a Beretta. You remember the Berettas? Those are really cool. The Berettas, I had a kid brought me one up in the parking lot. He was driving a Beretta. Like, they ain't made one in 20 years. He was driving one. It's his first car. My dad, once again, we bought first-year production. A little slow, Robison. I'm driving down the road. I hit a bump, which is pretty common in Mississippi, right? All 4 hubcaps come off like sidewinder missiles. So I'm on the side of the damn road and picking hubcaps out of trees and stuff. About the 30th time, what do you think I did? We go down the interstate doing 100, bang, 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 bang. The hell with it, let them go. Okay. And so you can always tell a first-year Beretta they ain't got no wheel cap. Because it was just you don't know if you run it 50,000 miles, or they just had a little hubcap there. So anyway, so I haven't bought another production model. I'm in awe of God's heart. Nothing man-made can work this long. Maybe the computers in your phone doing transitions, or maybe getting close to that, right? You know, the way they operate. But that's not mechanical, right? That's more electronic stuff, right? I'm talking about something opens and closes like this door, like those valves. That's pretty impressive. So you need to thank God for that heart, okay? And what do we do? What do we do? We're fat. We're going to do this. We're fat. We eat grease. We don't exercise. We try to kill ourselves. And then some of us smoke. Let's just go ahead and take a pistol, right? I mean, really, okay? Now, I had a sausage this morning, so I'm playing Russian roulette with that, okay, myself, okay? But I choose to die from sausage. Y'all choose your path carefully, right? All right, that's on the test. Let's get that out of the way. I mean, now I can close this down. That's going to be the next one here. Somebody shut that down. Oops, that didn't work. Oh, here we go. I never remember how to work all this cool technology. All right, hey, I think I got out of that. No, I didn't. Oh, well. How did we do that? Well, I see my notes. I don't know where all this other stuff comes from. All right, we may have to go back to. When in doubt. There we go. Let's see if I can figure this out. This may be a bad idea. What I would have done for just a little bit of a, come on, baby, close down. Ah, there we go. That's better. All right, let's see if we can go back to, here we go, PC mode. Should pull my power. Ah, look at that. That popped back up. Never mind. Leave it alone. Leave it alone. Go away. All right, so anyway, back to our heart. Okay, and it's just going to walk through it right here for you. Look, here's the cut heart. I don't know why this is, but everybody, whoever drew this the first time after we wrote this out, but we discovered this. Whoever drew the first heart drew it wrong, and everybody copies it. This chamber, your left ventricle is bigger than the right ventricle. Okay. Now, if this is correct, see how thin the right is, especially the thick muscle part here, because it's got to pump all the way down to your big toes, right? But you look at the cut heart, and the left side is always bigger. You look at, so you'll cut it down the middle, look at both sides. The left side is going to be bigger. Okay, remember, the cardiac muscle has this intercalated disc. These scalp junctions allows it to communicate, so you get that rhythmic contraction. Okay, that's kind of cool. And here's the blood flow that I just gave you. Okay, here's two terms you've heard a lot of: systolic and diastolic, right? Systolic refers to contraction of skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle. Diastolic means relaxation. So when we do blood pressure, the top number is called systolic pressure. That's the pressure exerted on your arteries when the heart's contracting, right? And the diastolic bottom number is the pressure exerted on the arteries when the heart is relaxed. Okay, so that's one way you can learn that. Okay, and so a cardiac cycle is one complete heartbeat, and that is the whole step I talked through. Where now this is, I'm going to show a video of this in just a minute. We got about 10 minutes, but I do have some videos I can show you some animation. But the right atriums and left atrium contract at the same time, flush blood into the ventricles. Then the ventricles contract, okay, and push blood out the pulmonary trunk and out the aorta, thus closing these valves. That's the S1 sound. That's the lub and the lub dub, or ba, boom, ba. That's the ba, boom, is the simulator valve closes when the ventricles relax. So that is one heart cycle, complete cardiac cycle, when both atriums fire and both ventricles fire and all four chambers close. Pretty cool. SA nodes are the heart, the pacemakers in the up in the right atrium that cause the cardiac pacemaker to contract every 0.85 seconds. So the heart will beat on its own. So we can take it out. Somebody's been in a car wreck and their brain is damaged and they're dead. They put it in an igloo on some saline flight to Chicago, put it in somebody that needs a heart. And hey, how long does somebody live with a heart donation? I'm sure there's some 60-year-old kid that got one in 69. I think it's the first one done. That's why somebody in 1970 has had that now 50 years possible. So whatever that limit is, it's probably 50 years now. They're living the record, right? So we've been doing heart transplants since the early 70s, late 60s. Very cool. Pulse, we already said that, the expanding of arteries when the heart contracts. And EKG is electrical reading, or ECG is electrical, or also called EKG. The Germans discovered it, and they don't have a C in their language. The K is how they say the cardiac sound. Okay, that word is K in German. And there are three ways I want you to know: P, QRS, and T waves. We got one in AMP lab. We'll pick it up to you. And the P wave is the electricity spreading over the atriums as the atriums contract or depolarize. The QRS, the big wave, is the ventricles depolarizing and contracting, while the atriums repolarize and relax. And then that T wave is ventricular repolarization. It returns to normal. All that occurs in 0.85 seconds. Now, when you're running or jogging and your athletes are doing your thing, cheerleading or whatever, it's more fast than that. You can get up to 100, 140, 150 before you have any trouble, right? 160, 170, then you're at the gym, then it starts cutting off, right? Like you're going to get yourself, okay? It'll cut itself off sometimes. But be able to draw an EKG and label the P, QRS, and T wave and know what those three waves are. There's the SA nodes that start the heartbeat and the AV nodes that carry it down to the ventricle. Delaying a little bit so the atriums contract first while the ventricles fill, then the ventricles fire after the atriums are fired, so you push all the blood out. Pacemakers are just machines that help SA and AV nodes. So a lot of people, when they have a heart attack, it damages the circulatory system, or the electrical system of the heart. And some people just have a birth defect. You got a bad SA node, so pacemaker can be a life changer. Can change your life, save your life. Okay, pretty cool. We already mentioned pulmonary and systemic circuit. There's a better picture showing how the systemic goes to all your internal organs. and it includes the head, right? And then the pulmonary circuit simply goes to the lungs and pumps it back to the heart. Okay, we already mentioned blood pressure, right? You have use a sphygmomanometer, and you cut blood flow off to the arm, and you're measuring the pressure coming back in the brachial artery. So you pump it up to about 180, unscrew it, let the air fall down, about 120, you'll hear the blood push back in the arm. So the first sound you hear is the top number, then the last sound you hear is the bottom number. Okay, so you hear it goes like boom, boom, and it ain't like a train running through a darn house. So it's kind of real slow, like, and when it stops, that's the bottom number. And what we concern ourselves with is high blood pressure is when that bottom number is sustained above 90. So I've been having high blood pressure for a couple of years, probably due to being overweight and my job stresses because I'm trying to keep everybody straight. These 22 people I have to keep up with. But back in Christmas, I actually went to my doctor, who's one of my best friends, and he had looked at my last time I'd been to the doctor was like 3 years ago, or 5 years ago, and I had my blood pressure a little high then, so he put me on blood pressure medicine. Now that day, my blood pressure was like 140 over 95, 100. It's like 140 over 100. It was high. I took that pill, measured it the next morning, it was 110 over 60. Crazy. And so what those common causes of high blood pressure is that angiotensin-renin hormone system running wild for no reason. We don't know why. This is the cause of almost 85% of high blood pressure. And so the pill I take, it costs $8 a month to take them, stops that, binds the binds the receptor that hormone binds to on all my blood vessels. And so basically, a lot of people have high blood pressure, we make this hormone that binds to the blood vessels and squeezes the water hose like you squeezing the water hose to wipe the truck, a car. By squeezing the hose, you get more pressure and it squirts out. And that causes organ damage on all your other organs. So probably should have been on that before that. But anyway, it's kind of cool, and it kind of blew my mind how quick it goes down. And then after I sent him a picture of that, he said, well, if that top number goes below 100, just take half a pill. He's like, I don't want to kill you with this, because it will lower your blood pressure. So anyway, that's a big deal. And here's a good graph showing you blood pressure in arteries and veins as we go across. So by the time we get to veins, there's very little pressure in veins, as you can see in that picture. Veins pump blood back to the heart by squeezing, muscle squeezing, and valve prevent backflow. We've already mentioned that. With varicose veins being veins that are not drained properly. Hypertension, 30% of Americans have high blood pressure. Probably one of the leading causes of arteriosclerosis is buildup of fat in the muscle, in the arteries of the heart and the body. Look at this. This is actually, we had a big debate about this because a lot of the books talk about it clogging up the arteries. It doesn't clog up in the ligament. It actually is in the. It's a good picture. The arteriosclerosis is plaque buildup in the layers of the artery itself. And it bubbles up, kind of like your arteries are unraveling. And this occurs where you have bends in the blood vessels or turns. So it's like the flow is busting it up. And if this plaque ruptures into the blood vessel, then it can become a thrombus, which is a moving blood clot that can give you a stroke or a lung clot and kill you in just a few minutes. Or it can pop out and clog up the whole arteries. And a heart attack is when the heart doesn't get enough oxygen and nutrients. So if you get a clot in one of these coronary arteries, that leads to a heart attack. Heart attack is blood flow blockage to the heart. Okay, a stroke is a blood clot in the blood vessels in the brain. So cardiovascular disease, blood clots, the coronary arteries, no one causes death in America. And then probably cancer and strokes is 2 or 3. So 2 of the top 3 are blood flow problems. One to the brain, strokes, to the heart attack. Now, the most common thing, we used to have a rotor-rooter, we go in there and just cut it out, and then just pop the scar tissue would just pop back up. So here's the most common thing, is to use a stent that is a mesh that they put in that keeps it open, keeps the blood flow going. A lot of people have already had a blockage, and their arteries just grew new arteries around the clot. One of my coworkers has a blockage in one of his the main vein drained his brain, but his veins grew new veins around it. And the doctor said, like, we're going to leave it alone. You got an aneurysm, and you know what, it ain't moving, and we don't want to go in there and try to pull it out, because we'll break off a little piece and give you a stroke key. I had a good friend of mine who was about 60, this is like 30 years ago. He went to do a heart cath, and if you do the heart catheterization, they're looking at these blood vessels in your heart. And you have to sign a little waiver that we may kill you, and they bumped the clot loose and killed him. Right there. I mean, they'll give you he had an aneurysm in the lungs and killed him like that. So having those done, I know y'all have parents done, that can be a very serious thing if there's a problem. If they're having a bad day and they bump into it, then you may have a really worse day than they do. Okay. So keep that in mind if you ever have those annual class done where they go in there and check these blood vessels. Blood, we already mentioned this, we got about 2-3 minutes. Blood is the component, is the liquid that we use to carry all our nutrients and stuff. Of course, here's what it's made. I like the great picture here. The formed elements are red blood cells, which carry oxygen and carbon dioxide, and then the rest of these are defenders. Neutrophils, lymphocytes, monocytes, basophils, eosinophils, these are defenders. Platelets cause coagulation and clotting, that first clot on blood cut. The plasma is the water part, that's 92% water and about 7-8% plasma proteins that help maintain osmosis, and including fibrinogen that causes coagulation of blood. Then you have salts, gases, very little gas, right? Because water don't like gases. And then there's food, nutrients, and waste products and hormones carried in the blood, because every cell has access to blood pretty much. Pretty cool, right? So this is the way we get things to the body. And I'm not going to go over these. You can look at those. I don't have time to talk about blood type, and I may talk a little bit about that in the video for tomorrow's classes. I got a little bit of time to knock these 2 chapters out. But this is pretty cool. We can just maybe, let's just start. Well, we can talk about this, but there are 4 main types of blood in the ABO blood type. You're either A, B, AB, or O. A people have A markers, B people have B markers, AB people have AB markers. The antigen is a marker on the red blood cell, these markers. O people have no markers. I have type O blood. I make antibodies to both A and B. So if you give me A and B, I make these little Y's that will coagulate like this. So that's the little Y's that are going to cause the coagulation of the blood. Let's see if they have a picture of coagulation. Well, they would make them all stick together. Okay. And you don't want to have that happen, right? Okay. So I can give blood to anybody in a crisis, but I can only get blood from O. O is the most common blood type. AB is the rarest. And there is some differences along some ethnic lines, not because anybody's better than anybody else. It's just the way God made us. If you happen to be on the Australian continent, then you only met and married in Australia for the last like 100,000 years until what? We developed planes and ships the last 200 years, right? So people were stuck where they were. Now that we have more interracial marrying and so forth, then we're going to see some of these differences disappear. I will end with really flowing here. There are very few Native American Indians that are AB. Very rare. I mean, matter of fact, some books would say 0%. It's got to be 1, like 0.01, right? So I had a former student that made a nurse, and she was a traveling nurse. And that's what a lot of nurses want to do. You can travel all over the world and do like 3 months. And one of my girls, I thought, did 3 months in Hawaii, and she did 3 months in San Francisco, and 3 months in South. So she's seen the whole country. But anyway, this other girl I thought was out there in Arizona working on an Indian reservation. And there are, the Indian hospitals and stuff are pretty nice. And so this ER doctor was hitting on her, and he was just showing her to the ER. It was late one night, nothing going on. And he said, let me show you the blood we got, for emergency. Had a bunch of O, like mainly all O, and a few units of A and a few units of B. And then she goes, where's the AB? He said, there's nobody in this county AB. And she said, I'm AB. And he said, be careful. Because they know AB in this whole county, okay? So she got in the car wreck, and had to give her some over or something. Anyway, but anyway, y'all have a good day. We'll pick this up. I'll be talking a little bit more about this in the lecture tomorrow. All right, y'all get out of here. Have a good day. Thanks for paying attention. May the force be with you. All those good things. Let me stop this thing. I remember how to stop. Oh, no, stop. Stop this thing so that it'll